the one thing I want to discourage people is to ever view any experience or any relationship, whether it's that you're doing a degree or anything, as wasted time. There is always something you can learn and take from that experience. You need to have hope. You need to have hope. You cannot, otherwise, why are you just struggling with your own ignorance or with the world in general, whatever? And you can very easily, I think, in science or in engineering, and as you're struggling there on your own, you're sitting in the exam and you're on your own, because you can't talk to people or whatever.
Yeah.
It can be that you can feel isolated and you can feel that why am I doing this? Start questioning everything. And that's, unfortunately, I think, a very slippery slope that people can, but it's very comfortable to just kind of slip in there and have a big pity party that, everything is against you and everybody is out to get you.
Good day, good morning, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to House of Scientists and Engineers. This is a new podcast by Biust students, aspiring engineers and scientists, for other fellow aspiring engineers and scientists. So feel free to join in and enjoy with us as we delve into matters of interest in this topic of science and engineering. Welcome. Let me start by doing introductions. Then my name is Ryan Miti. Ryan Miti, you can call me captain for this session because I'll be the one that is leading the ship as we'll be taking you through this journey. I'm a level 400 engineering student in the Botswana International University of Science and Technology. Thank you very much. Today we'll be doing our very first podcast. So this is our first interview and we are hopeful for something better. Feel free to join in and do make sure that you interact with us. We have our guest here in studio, and at this point in time, I just want him to introduce himself.
Thank you, Ryan. Thank you, everybody. My name is Jacobus Diener. I am, most people from Biust should know me as the lecturer of Physics 101, which I've been teaching for the past couple of years. And I'm honored to be the first guest on the podcast and looking forward to it.
Thank you very much, Dr. Diener. That is very good to know and very wonderful to hear. Before any further ado, I want us to do a brief breakdown of this entire podcast. As mentioned, it is by aspiring engineers and scientists for other fellow engineers and scientists in the market. We are Botswana citizens, so most of our discussions will be focused on our landscape in the engineering and also in the science sector, be it physics, be it biology, be it chemistry, maths, computer sciences, and all the different aspects of engineering. So be with us throughout this entire journey. The intention is that we just break down these simple aspects so that we create a conducive environment for all people in this field to thrive. Potentially also we want to reach out to investors, to parastatals, to each and everyone out there and just create awareness of this topic and this field for people all around us. So thank you very much and enjoy. Let us get in touch with our discussion, Dr. Diener. Let us start. I want you to do a thorough introduction of yourself and just your journey, your background of how it came about. You mentioned that you are a lecturer here and I am a student. So how is it? I want you to share with us how that came about. How has your academic journey went about?
Okay, so I started as with most people in the thing. I started studying university. I was a student at Stellenbosch University. I'm from down south. And it kind of just progressed from there. I started initially studying education, and then I thought I want to learn something more myself, and then I branched into physics. I actually did a mathematics degree, and then I carried on with the honors in physics, and then those who can do and those who can't, they try to teach. So I just kept on going, master's, PhD, and then I did a postdoctoral fellowship, then got offered the position in Biust, and then I came here. And I've been here since then for the past 7 years. So yeah, and I started teaching physics 101. Actually, within my first year here, I started 102, and I've been doing it since. Because I think from the part that I do enjoy the engagement with students, and I think it is it's an honor and a privilege to be one of the first faces that people see when they get into university, because I think, as most listeners would be aware, it is quite a transition to go from high school to university, and to be part of that journey. I don't know how successful it has been for all involved, but yeah, I guess that's something we might get to.
Thank you very much for that answer, Dr. Diener. Indeed, true to what he just said, he was my first lecturer for physics when I also started here in Biust, and that really was a good start. So it's good that yet once more here I'm doing level 400 and he's here with me and I'm the one interviewing him. So yeah, thank you very much for that. You mentioned that you started in maths, your degree at first. So you started in maths, but then you progressed to physics, and here you are a physics lecturer. What drew or sparked interest in this field of physics and astronomy, or so to say? Then also, how has it been like in Stellenbosch? How has it been like in the National Institute of Theoretical Physics in South Africa? Then eventually here in Botswana, how has it been like?
So, to maybe answer your first question, I think in science, it's always, especially if you're doing a science degree, it's never clear what will you be. With engineering, it's a little bit more focused that a possible career choice would be a professional engineer, even though it's not given.
Yeah.
And for myself, I started actually studying a combination of math and geology. And then I started thinking, well, I'm interested in both, and what's like in the middle, and then I ended up on physics. So it wasn't like I didn't start off thinking I'm going to do a physics degree. It kind of evolved. And I think that is not a unique experience for a lot of people. I think some people start out studying with the idea that they want to be a forensic scientist or a biologist or something like that. But it's also, I don't think it's that common that people end up going into that specific field. I think on engineering, medicine, apart from, the sciences, you've got, I think, like accounting or everything. You become an accountant. When you study accounting, you become an accountant. When you study science, it's not necessarily that you'll become a scientist. So I think that was a big part of the journey. And like you mentioned, then an opportunity to do a postdoctoral fellowship at the National Institute for Theoretical Physics, which is a government-funded institute in South Africa, where we try to, where there's been an emphasis on understanding in terms of applying mathematics to understand physical problems. Yeah. So that is, I think, the core of theoretical physics. So it's more about trying to think and understanding and thinking of different ways how to model or how to simplify complicated systems mathematically, and then see what does that tell us and what can you learn from it. Because it's all about interpretation.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Well, indeed, true to what you said, we do start out with having our own desires, but eventually, after being introduced to a certain field, you get to learn more, and then you progress eventually to what you find yourself doing eventually. But that is good to hear how your journey to become a physicist that you are came about. Thank you very much. I understand the National Institute of Theoretical Physics in South Africa is a research institute, as you mentioned, focusing on physics and also mathematics again. Then I want you to tell me how has it been like, because Biust is a research institution. It was made to be a research institution. Then you came here as a lecturer from that institution. So I want you to share with me how has the transition been like for you to move from that to becoming a lecturer, and how has that shaped your own academic journey or your own personal well-being or your wholeness in your career?
So I think with everything, it's important to realize, with any informational science, that a lot of things are contextual. So first, I think in terms of NITHIC, as we used to call it, now called NITHICS. They expanded to the computational science in general, so computer science, theoretical physics, mathematical statistics. So it's a much broader institute now, but that was in response to a need identified that we need more computational, this is called computational sciences in general. But once again, that's a contextual response. Biust is also a contextual response to an issue that was identified by the government, where they wanted to create this knowledge economy. We can talk about what exactly one can interpret that to mean, because I think everybody's got a different idea of what it is exactly.
Yes.
And so it is, so a lot of these things have been contextual. So when you start, so I think the biggest thing coming to Biust was knowing that it is a new university. New universities are not a common thing. It's not, new university doesn't get started like all the time. Lots of times these are established institutions, more than 100 years old. It's been around for a while. It's got its own culture. Here at Biust, because it was starting off, it was still growing up. So it's figuring a lot of things out. So that was, I think, the perspective was that now how do you bring, because I mean, it's almost like the United Nations in terms of the academic staff. Everybody comes from everywhere around the world. So there's a lot of different perspective coming in. And now I think the challenge was and still is, how do you mold that now in a coherent culture? Because essentially that academic culture is a big part of what you want to transfer to students, and that drives your research and that gives context to what you're trying to do. So yeah, I'm very interested in context.
That is good to know. You mentioned that aspect of instilling something in another person or just driving them and guiding them, especially these new students. I want you to reflect back on yourself. Have you had any mentors or any people who guided you or played a significant role growing up in your life as an individual in terms of your academics, in terms of your general growth, and how that has helped shape you?
Yes, of course. I mean, everybody has got, hopefully, everyone had some influential teachers at school and at university. University is a little bit different because I think, as I try to explain to everybody, the focus of university is much different. I mean, you've got much larger classes. There's few personal interactions. You don't, as a lecturer, as opposed to a teacher will spend much more time with the pupils, say, throughout a year, whereas I just taught for one semester and then you get somebody else who has a completely different approach, maybe, or a different pedagogy. So, but in terms of, I think, the people that was most useful for me in terms of shaping my thinking were not necessarily professionals, or it wasn't necessarily in the hard sciences. It was, it was not in terms of, I'm trying to say, it was not necessarily going to knowledge and better understanding it, but it was rather somebody who emphasized different ways of thinking and approaching to things and interpreting knowledge and information and all of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That is well noted. So it is truly important for us as aspiring engineers and scientists for us to have people we look up to, people, mentors who guide us and just help us to mold our craft into something that we can market into the outside world to take our economy forward.
Yeah, and if I may maybe just add to that, it's not necessarily that somebody is instructing you or telling you how to do something. It's also you can also be by basically, it's called stealing someone's approach to how they do things. Or you see, this guy interprets this differently, or his approach to this is slightly different from what you have done. So that relative to that comparison, you can also learn a lot from people. And I think that's been most useful for me to actually being guided by professionals who's been a long time in their field and just comparing their approach to say how I would do things or how would I think about things. So that contrast can also be very useful.
Thank you very much. I believe that will wrap up the end of our first section whereby we talked just about our introductions and our background. So, but thank you very much. I believe our viewers have gotten vital information that they'll use to mold their own careers and their professions to be something that we can make a living out of. Thank you. I want us to talk of research and expertise. I believe as a Biust lecturer here in Biust, you are still continuing with your research and your projects that you're doing to further your studies, to further your knowledge. Can you shed some light on some of your projects that you are currently working on? Thank you.
Yeah, so there's two main ones. One is my physics studies, and then I also do physical educational studies. So in terms of that's the stuff that I basically did my PhD on, which concerns neutron stars. I don't want to talk about what that is, but I can speak at length and bore people. But essentially, neutron stars are the ashes are formed out of the ashes of an exploded star. So it's one of the endpoints of stellar evolution. And when that ashes gets compacted by a gravitational force, it forms what we essentially model as a giant nucleus. But I'm not talking about a nucleus of the order of 10 kilometers, so about the size of a city. It will fit neatly over gaps. So you've got a star that's essentially 10 kilometers in diameter, or no, with a radius about 10 kilometers, so 20 kilometers in diameter. That has comparative density to that of nuclear matter. So what does that mean? Well, it means that 1 teaspoon of the star's matter weighs about 500 million tons. So these are one of the densest states of matter. Now the comparison, it's always like, I haven't updated yet because people on the planet keeps growing, but essentially the comparative density is confining the population of the Earth to the volume occupied by a pair of dice, basically 2 square centimeters. So you're squeezing everybody into this much space to get the comparative density. Obviously, that will not be very comfortable or conducive for living, but that's essentially what the star is made of. And if it's too massive, it will collapse into a black hole. So it's literally, it's things that out there, and we do see them, or we hear them, but you could ask me now, what's the relevance to Botswana? Why does that have any interest? But I can explain why.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Indeed, you have shed some light on how you view the world and some of the areas of interest that are to you as a physicist and also as someone who's in academia. But let's get to your question, Warren. What all that you've mentioned of stars, then also the nuclear material, nuclear physics in general, because that is one area that you were keenly interested in when you were doing Physics 101. How does it impact a landscape like that of Botswana? How would it benefit the engineering? How would it benefit the scientific field in general?
Okay, so the two things. In terms of, so as main scientific goal, and how does this contribute to, is that Botswana is part of the SKA, the Square Kilometre Array Consortium. So essentially we'll be getting part of the SKA array. Now the SKA array is a radio telescope array. So it will mainly be based in South Africa, but due to the way we do the observations, they'll have outrigger stations across Southern Africa, Namibia, Botswana, Mauritius, Mozambique, I think. It all depends on how the funding pans out, which I don't have no control over either. But Botswana will be hosting, and as part of that, there is a big drive to develop astronomy in Botswana because people have seen, well, it's been noted across the world that science and technological innovation gets driven, well, mostly wars, unfortunately, drives scientific innovation a lot of times because people make plans, but that's not the best way of going about it in terms of if you want to preserve life. But to kind of replicate that kind of knowledge driving of information and impetus to discover new things, countries are aligning themselves to big scientific research questions. And I think that's why Botswana and South Africa and the other countries in South Africa was part of this bid to host this, which essentially it's funded by it was initiated in Europe and in the UK, the SKA itself, but they needed somewhere to host the thing that is, well, more quiet, radio quiet, and unfortunately people make radio noise. Our cell phones, our microphones, smart houses, all of that. So you're looking for sparsely populated places on the earth.
Okay.
And South Africa, the population density in certain parts is quite low. Same with Botswana, and Namibia. So there are spaces where you can put these extremely sensitive telescopes to listen to, essentially to pick up radio waves from outer space. And through that, okay, on the one hand, now you need to place that thing there. You need to host it. You need to be able to service it. You need technical expertise. It's a construction problem. It is ICT problem. It is a networking problem, because the data that we'll be gathering, there's so much gigabits that needs to be traveling, that needs to be connected to a central center.
Yeah.
So there's all sorts of scientific and engineering challenges around this, apart from just interpreting the data.
Okay.
So that is, I think, so in terms of Botswana, that is both the challenge and the opportunity to be involved in such a project. We need to be producing both people that can manage and work with these telescopes, as well as ones that could be interpreting the data and working with it, because you don't want to be in a position where you exporting your data to other people to interpret, because that's like exporting your natural resources to somewhere else for somebody to do with it and make money off it.
Yeah.
And so you want to be part of the knowledge value chain.
Thank you very much. That is well noted, and I believe it is really something that is very much of a relevant to us as a Botswana. In the times that we are in, our government is currently undergoing a transition from a mineral-based economy to a knowledge-based economy. And what you just shared with us with the SKA project will just share much more knowledge on, make people aware of the opportunities that will come with your work in nuclear physics and the like, so that Botswana and every engineer and scientist in this landscape can be able to partake of these opportunities and actually make this reality of a knowledge-based economy in Botswana a reality. Thank you very much. There is one thing I want you to zone into, being medicine and agriculture.
Yes.
Medicine and agriculture. As Botswana, those are two areas whereby we have really made strides previously in terms of our economy and our growth. How does nuclear physics and how does nuclear science and your technology help in these two areas for Botswana in general?
Yeah. So for my field of research, personally, it doesn't really affect, it doesn't impact those. That doesn't mean, well, not in the current term, that doesn't mean there might be long-term impact. But in terms of nuclear physics, which is part of my background training, is very relevant to both those fields. Nuclear medicine is well known in terms of cancer treatments and imaging, and so diagnostics. And there are big plans to have institutes hosted here on campus to develop nuclear medicine, look at isotope production for the regional market, because a lot of times with different isotopes can show you different things. They attach to different cells, so you can identify different cancers. Unfortunately, some isotopes are very short-lived, so they can't travel very far. You need to manufacture them and you need to use them. There is a clock on them, essentially. So in terms of nuclear physics, while there are existing technologies, we are continuing improving and looking for new applications. In terms of agriculture, I think something that local people here are acutely aware of is, just if you drive with all the red fences that are up there, all the spread of diseases, and how to contain that, especially with a country that's geographically doesn't have that variation. There's not a lot of natural barriers in terms of mountain ranges or things. So if a disease starts somewhere and the wind blows in the wrong direction, it just gets spread around and livestock moving. So nuclear physics, there's lots of work being done in terms of sterilization. So in terms of having seeds, because if you're planting something, you just want to be planting the same thing. You don't want to be planting additional germs or whatever that's with it, that's living on it, to increase your crop yields. That sense. But also, I mean, now that I think of it, in terms of agriculture, there's a big shift towards what is called, I've forgotten what it is, microfarming. No, it's precision agriculture. Whereas you want to be able to basically gather as much information particular to you. You're not just planting maize. You don't have just a big field. You actually block the maize into different blocks, and you can see what the yields are. So it's a data-driven, what the yields are. Say if there's some, if the drone flies over it, do you see this discoloration, or the yield is different in certain areas. And precision farming actually speaks to astronomy.
Yes.
Because all our telescopes, so all the SK telescopes, for that spread over all Southern Africa, for them to work as a coherent unit, they need to know exactly where they are relative to one another.
Okay.
So, because at the moment, if you look at your phone or any GPS, any system that is locating you with reference to a satellite constellation or anything like that, all of that information is processed relative to one single reference point in Southern Africa. Unfortunately, that's the only one, and that is in Jacobus. It's a radio telescope in Jacobus, close to between Rustenburg and Pretoria. So it's about 600 kilometers that way. And everything, you are geolocated in reference to that point. Because that is, any GPS constellation first checks their orientation with regard to that reference point that sends up the signal, because it's not the telescope itself, there's stations around the telescope. But so that means that your maps might not be as accurate if you only have one point, and because it doesn't take into account any relative shifts of you with regards to that reference point. Because we assume with regards to that reference point that Palapa is saying 737.052. How many ever significant figures? Talking to you, Physics 101. There are, so relative to that point where you are. But if any shifts occurred, I mean, we've kind of, you can't just measure it once and say that everything between here and there is tectonically stable, it will never move, there's no upheaval, there's no relative shifts. And that might, it might be small, but it could be significant in the long run in terms of navigation. So if you want to come back to agriculture, what people are doing is a lot of it's automated these days, especially mega farms. And to be able to drive your tractors, the things don't run into the ditch, whatever, you need accurate location. So a lot of these things depends on accurately knowing and accurately locating yourself. And hopefully with the SK being here, we want to install some ground stations, GPS ground stations on campus. So that would, and there's some very fancy telescopes as well. You can install that. For that, the government will need to have a couple of like 40 million lying around. So I'm not quite sure if they'll be keen on that. Well, not yet, but it does speak to, well, if you want to speak to both medicine and agriculture, then it goes to borders.
Okay. I believe we have addressed that one in full, and I believe all the points that you raised indeed are very relevant, and we can really see the significance of your work to an average Botswana out there on how this research and this work could actually advance us and help us to be a self-sustaining economy in the country. Thank you very much. Largely, you have been talking of your research work and how it is progressing. I want you to shed some light of some challenges that you encounter or that you have encountered as a researcher. And also, I also want you to highlight on some of the key successes or things you'd say they are milestones for you in the past 7 years or so that I've mentioned you being a researcher and in this field of nuclear science and astronomy.
Don't know about achievements because the biggest challenge is that you're permanently confronted with your own ignorance. And you can figure something out and then think you're the most clever person that the planet has ever seen. But anything that you realize, then it's just another set of questions coming along.
Okay.
So it is being in science and being a scientist is a field of ups and downs.
Yeah.
You have it highs and lows, but I think the biggest quality that you're looking for is that to be able to do science is perseverance.
Yeah.
To be able to investigate your own assumptions, learn from them, talking to other people, testing your ideas, and that is both the biggest challenge, but as well as the biggest reward. Because at the end of the day, you master something that you were essentially ignorant about. Say whether it was 5 minutes ago, 10 minutes ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. So there's this opportunity for, and I mean, it could be, you could just say this is just for yourself, you're just understanding and you're very clever and that's fine. But it's also an opportunity to, if you understand something, to be able then to help other people understand it, to convey that. So, I mean, that is, to my mind, that's part of, especially being in university, is conveying that understanding and helping other people achieve it. Because if I once heard an expression that if you, well, I can't remember exactly what it is, but it conveys back to the idea that what is the point of just you knowing something?
Yeah.
Because then if you die, it goes away with you. So it was essentially that you can understand everything there is to understand in the world, but if you can't explain to somebody, it is essentially irrelevant.
Well noted, well noted. Indeed, one thing I loved about him is when he talked of perseverance, especially in this area of science and engineering. Challenges are there because science is basically you trying to discover what was not known. So you need to be persevere for you to actually get by. And thank you very much for highlighting that. I want us to continue, and I want us to talk about the future. The future. I want
It's uncertain.
Yeah, the future is uncertain as you have mentioned, but I just want us to shed some light on it. And in terms of your work, what is the projected outlook for nuclear physics and astronomy for Botswana, as that is a freshly established or something that is new in the entire marketscape? Will we see a NASA people reaching out? Will we see us Botswana citizens actually being able to be part of the lead engineers at NASA working on the next space exploration and stuff? How does that do in terms of astronomy, then also nuclear physics, the outlook for the future?
Well, I would hope so. I mean, that is definitely the plan and the idea behind Biust, to be able to be part of these mega international projects.
Yeah.
But it's also an opportunity, which I think is rather the one that people should be focusing on, to contextualize, not copying what other people are doing, but owning it in the context of Botswana, in its regional context, in its regional advantages. Because every country, in terms of, has some advantage, whether it's in terms of its economic development, its culture, its natural resources, its strategic location, all of that. And in terms of how successful this is, it doesn't depend on me. It depends on the students. It depends on the people stepping up to be involved in this field, to take that leap, because it is essentially uncertain.
Yeah.
I mean, if the future was predictable, completely 100% predictable, then, I mean, I'll be out of the job and you guys don't have to be studying. We all wouldn't need to learn, because everything is already planned out and you can predict everything with a high degree of accuracy or certainty. But that's not the case. So I think the biggest challenge is managing expectations and investigating opportunities. It's a combination of those two things.
Thank you very much for that. And all that, the future is really uncertain, but there's one key trend that I observed, especially in the field of engineering, that has shaped a lot of things, and that has to be machine learning. And machine learning and also big data. How can you take these and and just link them to astronomy and also project them into that entire future outlook and impact. What does all these have to offer for Botswana and the entire African continent at large?
Well, those things are only tools. It's tools. And it's whether people want to use them or not. And it's not that that it could be relevant or irrelevant, or that there's a specific economy that could be developed. Everything is once again contextualized. It's what you use these tools for, and what benefit comes from using them in terms of and can you contextualize that to the local context? Because I think the one thing that we unfortunately notion that I don't think we need to disabuse, or what's the word, forget about, is that Botswana will not be competing against the United States in terms of technology, or China, or Germany, or any of these developed countries. It's not a relevant benchmark for us, and it's an unfair benchmark in terms of our student performance. That doesn't mean that we cannot learn from what is being done there, and essentially copy some of the programs, but contextualize it to be locally relevant and to address local issues. So I think, because a lot of times I've had a conversation with students where they want to drive some innovation, or they want to investigate something and make it relevant. And always there's two questions that come to mind. One, what are you doing differently? So essentially, what's your innovation? And how are you going to go about developing and refining it? That's your biggest question. But the flip side of that same coin is essentially a marketing problem. It's a PR problem. How relevant is it to people? Would people be using this? And essentially, would they be paying money to be able to do this? Or is it just something that obvious that anyone can do? So what makes this intervention or this innovation special and relevant to the local context? And I think in terms of discovering what those things are, it's not different. It's not like Botswana doesn't need to build the next space shuttle. You just as a science engineer just needs to be walking down the street, keeping your eyes open, and seeing, say, things that you can be improving or assisting with, say, a farmer with its livestock, or in the agricultural field, or whether it's just something as simple as helping with the fencing, or discovering some new chain link fence that's better suited to the local rodents or animals or whatever. That's contextualizing information.
Okay, well noted. In all this thing, you are really emphasizing how we ought to contextualize this information and this knowledge that we're gaining from all this, through physics, through astronomy, through big data. But that is a keynote, and I believe the viewers are very much taking note of that. I'm about to end my section of this interview, so before we do that, I just want us to tone it down a bit. You gave something very profound on what we as individuals ought to have an outlook for, questions we ought to ask ourselves when we just finished there. So I want you to share some insight on possible ways an aspiring engineer, an aspiring student here in Biust can actually go about with their studies, especially if they want to pursue physics, they want to pursue astronomy, anything they ought to look out for. I remember in Physics 101, there was always one thing we looked for in your lecture slide was your motivation. You had to make sure that there is a motivation there. So at every point, the students always, in class, that was one thing we always kept. So please do that for us once more, but now zoning into physics, zoning into astronomy and math.
So I think all of those kind of motivating things that I try to include in the lecture, the positive thoughts.
Positive thoughts.
Because that's the flip side to perseverance. Because for you to persevere, you need to have hope. You need to have hope. You cannot, otherwise, are you just struggling with your own ignorance or with the world in general, whatever. And you can very easily, I think, in science or in engineering, and as you're struggling there on your own, you're sitting in the exam and you're on your own because you can't talk to people or whatever.
Yeah.
It can be very that you can feel isolated and you can feel that why am I doing this? Start questioning everything, and that's unfortunately, I think, a very slippery slope that people can. But it's very comfortable to just kind of slip in there and have a big pity party. That, everything is against you and everybody is out to get you. And I think there's two things to realize. Is one, that everybody's got their own struggles. Everybody's dealing with their own stuff that they need to figure out, that they are confronted with, whether it's personal, familial, scientific, the education, whatever. Everybody's dealing with stuff.
Yes.
And I think a lot of the times, but I mean, we're not only dealing with the same stuff all the time. And there's also an opportunity there to see the opportunity in everything. Because I think one of the biggest challenges is if you have a preconceived idea of this is how the world should work, you are kind of bound to be disappointed, unfortunately. But I think it's rather, embracing change, embracing uncertainty, but not saying that, anything goes. There's no, it's complete anarchy and everything is it's just a big mess. We can't do anything about it anyway.
Yeah.
It's taking because a big part of this is also responsibility. And I like how people say responsibility is response and ability. The ability of you to respond, the ability of you to choose how do you respond to this. How do you embrace an opportunity? What do you do with your education? How do you contextualize the things that you've learned? How do you look at local problems that you are familiar with, that you might say have experience in your family or in your circle of friends, and how can you intervene with your knowledge and the tools that you have? Because it's just tools.
Yes.
Any education, any textbook, any undergraduate education is based on a textbook, right? It's not like we're grabbing these things out of thin air. It is established concept, meaning that you can read everything on the internet. All the knowledge is there. So now you can ask, why am I paying to do a degree?
Yeah.
And I don't want to put myself out of a job here, but the opportunity there is not necessarily the knowledge, but how you engage with it. How do you take these tools and put it in your toolbox, and what do you use it for?
Yes.
And I think that's the challenge, and that's the responsibility. That students and engineers, of engineering need to know that a lot of times there is, on the one end, you're waiting for opportunity, but the other end, you're also creating the opportunity.
Yes.
That is a conflict or friction between those two things that you will need to deal with. Well, if you can manage that, you will be successful.
You will be successful. Thank you very much for shedding light in that manner of way. So it was really insightful. Thank you very much. We're living in a world where there are lots of challenges. We encounter many things, but with a positive thought that hope is there, then we can keep on going, keep on persevering, and eventually we'll make it. Thank you very much. I'll be handing over to Nene at this time. Thank you very much.
All right.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi, Dr. Diener. Is that how you say your surname?
I've heard it in which way. I would pronounce it Diener.
Okay.
Because it's a German extraction, but I'm not German myself.
Oh, okay. All right, that's interesting. You said quite a mouthful of very useful information. I almost got lost in everything that was being said. I'm like, okay. Well, I'm just going to add a bit of what he has been touching on. For starters, when did you get that aha moment? I actually want to pursue physics, because you mentioned that you did a mathematics degree. So I'm assuming from high school you're like, yeah, I would do maths, and then you're like, oh wait, physics. When did you take that turn in your trajectory?
It wasn't. I don't think it was it was necessarily a moment that I can pinpoint, but it was rather following my interest.
Okay.
And I would really encourage everybody to, not that you want to flip around between subjects, but you need to be interested in something. You need to want to learn and discover more about it, because that makes the perseverance bit a little bit easier.
On that learning note, I am pursuing my master's, started this semester. I remember how I was feeling throughout the last semester, like, I'm about to finish, but I don't think I know what I actually want. And for me, pursuing my master's was more like, all right, let me just see where this goes, where I actually want to narrow. Are you then, to iterate what you're saying, can it be said that even though you still don't know what you want to do right after your degree, you shouldn't feel discouraged and feel like you just wasted 4 years? Your pursuit of interest could actually come even right after your master's.
Yeah.
Or your degree.
I mean, the one thing I want to discourage people is to ever view any experience or any relationship, whether it's that you're doing a degree or anything, as wasted time. There is always something you can learn and take from that experience. So in terms of, there's always a tool, there's something to be learned. There's something that you can internalize that's personal to you, that you can then not use later on in life, but is an experience that not everybody had. So in terms of that's unique to you. And I think in general people are too hard on themselves to, all this pressure, I don't think it comes from parents or society, to know what you should do, that you should be pursuing this or this.
Yeah, I feel like people are just forced to start getting the money, secure the bag, instead of pursuing what they actually want.
Unfortunately, that conflict never goes away, because yes, it's one thing to just keep on running off into the sunset and hoping you'll strike it rich somewhere. On the one hand, you still need to bring home the bread.
Yeah.
And it's that balance. But I think the best way for me to think about that is to always, you should at least have a plan A and a plan B.
Okay.
That doesn't mean that, if this doesn't work out, I'm going to start a pet grooming business in Balabe because everybody's got a dog with so many cats or whatever. It's more like to trust, to expand your set of skills and trust in your abilities to adapt.
Okay.
To be comfortable in that, to know that, you might be starting a master's degree, going with a specific topic, and then end up hating the topic, not being interested in it. But that doesn't mean that experience, that time that you invested in, is wasted. Maybe just learn that you're not interested in pursuing, say this, but that doesn't mean that a whole experience was wasted. There's still some tools that you gain from there. Like in that frustration, how did you deal with it? How did you expand it? Or you might be, as a little side project in this, might be exposed to something that then takes you on a whole new career trajectory. Being just exposed to a talk, something somebody said, and it clicked for you in terms of your context, and you realize, what they're talking about in my field is just this. And it's just a new way of doing things. So it's to always be open-minded. And especially, it's always difficult to have a general education, but I would really encourage people to read. There's so much information on YouTube and even Wikipedia. Not to then read only one thing and then take it as the gospel, but to broaden your information sources, because there's so much information and so much new ideas, and it comes so quickly and things change, that you must have, at least in some sense, I don't want to say keep yourself up to date, but do keep expanding your horizons.
Yeah, it's always good to be on top of the wave. You never know what you actually get.
Yeah, and you might be looking, you're in the trough now, and then you realize that, naturally you now, just because you're thinking something different that you didn't even realize, but you're on top of the wave, and there's an opportunity there. So, I think a lot of time people sit back and wait for things to come to them.
Like a job too.
For a job, or a sponsorship, or a bursary, or whatever it is that's going to satisfy whatever need you're trying to address. But it's not common for things to just arrive on your doorstep.
Yeah.
You need to go looking for it and expand your horizon, expand your toolkit.
On expansion, sir.
Yes.
As graduates, we have this mainstream thinking that when we finish school, since like topics or let me say courses like physics, chemistry are not that well developed in a country like this, our ideology is okay, when we finish, we're probably just going to be teachers. And that is like the conventional path that most students are thinking.
Yeah.
But do enlighten us of companies or organizations that could actually value the physics degree that we get from here and the skill that we do achieve.
So, in terms of physics, and I think science in general, especially not just the mathematically based sciences and engineering, but all sciences is in some sense problem solving, critical thinking. But that's also a skill that you need to develop. And that's, the best way to develop, I think, a critical thinking skill and a critical thinking mindset is just to expose yourselves to all sorts of information and then just ask the question, what do I learn from this? How would I have done it differently? Does it resonate with me, or doesn't it quite work? Or this won't work in Botswana, it might work in China or in South Africa, but it doesn't work here. And then think about for what reasons wouldn't it work?
Okay.
And then think about it, okay, but if that wouldn't work, what would work? So it's just that it's a questioning, it's just expanding beyond just the information that you are getting, trying to interpret, internalize it, and once again, contextualize it. In terms of critical thinking skills, the best example I can give them, and I'm not going to mention the entity, but it is a financial service institution. So I've got a graduate degree, I graduated with his master's, and he said, where should I apply for a job? And I said, well, go to one of the banks. Just get your foot in the door.
Yeah.
And he went for an interview. When he arrived and he gave him the degree, this is what he told me. So, you can get him on the podcast and you ask him himself. I'll give him further details offline. He was initially laughed out of the room because they've never seen someone with a physics background applying for this type of job.
Yeah.
And at the end of the year, they stopped laughing and they offered him the job.
Damn.
And apparently, the regional manager from South Africa came down and said, well, he just developed something and he's saved the bank a lot of money. And just optimizing some system by just thinking of it. Okay, so in general, a lot of physicists are employed in Silicon Valley, by these like tech companies and innovation, all of that, because physics, and I think science, any science field in general, there is a way of thinking that pertains to that scientific field that you're used to, say in biology, whatever field. You approach things in a systematic way that is developed over time that you get taught. However, that doesn't mean you cannot implement that way of thinking in a different context. Once again, and if you do that, you can add value to in a way that people are not expecting, or that does change fundamentally how that system operates. So a lot of times, and that's just, but to be able to figure out what that is, you need to both critically engage with your skill set, your tools, your approach, and be able to put it in, I don't want to use a contextual, but put it in the frame of reference of that system. Because you might understand something 100%, but because if we come from, it's like speaking a different language. If you don't speak the same language, you don't have the same cultural references. I can explain something where somebody that's familiar to my background will understand it completely, but somebody who's not familiar will just be like,
what is this?
What is this?
Is it far-fetched to say that physics graduates could actually wind themselves up in minds? Like, do they have something to offer the mind?
Yes, I think everywhere. I think if you think about critical thinking and then to optimize any process, I mean, there's no perfect process. That's what thermodynamics tells us. No process. There's always losses somewhere. And especially these days, technology is focused on not developing completely new approaches, but tailoring processes to be optimized and to minimize your losses. I mean, in general, it's called marginal gain. So you're looking for the small things that would make the big differences. Like, say, if you can save 3 tebe on a process that gets repeated 1,000,000 times, you save 300,000 pula. If that process is repeated every day for 365 days, it's basically 10 million pula if you save somebody. But it was a minimal change. So it's like, I mean, my grandmother always used to tell me, you save a match and you buy a farm. It's not winning the lottery. It's not like you're going to win the lottery immediately, but it's over time, things can gradually build up and make that change, that if you scale it up, it will be increasingly significant. So I think there's always an opportunity, whether you're a physicist or a mathematician or a biologist or whatever, to look for those small levers that would maybe, could be an insignificant saving, but over time, it's multiplied and then it can become quite significant.
Okay.
Or change in industry. And that has happened.
So it is factual to say that at the end of the day, it just comes to how much you believe in yourself and how much you're able to sell yourself to any place you find yourself in.
Yes, but that might get your foot in the door. But then the proof is in the pudding in terms of delivery.
Okay.
I mean, you can BS your way into almost anything, but if you don't deliver, then it's like the clock is ticking.
Yeah,
so I think it's the confidence in yourself and in your ability to contribute. And this is something that I mentioned quite a lot. But I think it's true in any economic system is if you can add value, if you can make a difference, if you can contribute, whether it's as a good team player. I mean, I've shown the slide, I think every year somewhere, and I can look, I'm in the report, but there's a World Bank report on Botswana itself where they asked employers, what do they value in their employees? And it wasn't like how good they can be their job. It was things like they were on time, they communicated well, they could take initiative, they could they contribute, not above and beyond. I mean, still everybody just gets a salary, but I mean, in terms of making a difference and being invested in the success of the company. If you just work for a salary just to get paid and you can't wait for Friday to come around and just leave it, well, just go and say hi, then you're not invested in the success of it. So there needs to be. So I think it's that confidence, yes, will get you in the door, but then it's looking at the small things and how you can add value, because that is valuable to everybody. Because one, if you look for those things, you will learn something. Two, you will contribute to whatever organization you're working for, which will then hopefully, in turn, have a reciprocal positive return on you as well. To also add value, or you get promoted, or you can spin off into something else. So it's also the skill set. You've got to back it up with the skill set.
Okay.
Sorry, I should say.
Okay.
Or develop your skill set while you're there. But I think CPD, continuous professional development, will be, if not already relevant now, will become extremely relevant to everyone in the science and engineering field, just because of the sheer volume of new information that's being produced every day that everybody basically instantaneously has access to through the internet.
Okay.
That is the biggest challenge for young people moving into the field of science and engineering, is being relevant, keeping up to date, exposing, constantly developing your skill set.
Because science and knowledge is always evolving. Okay.
And it's just speeding up. The rate of which papers are being produced, new ideas are being made, is just speeding up. It's not slowing down.
Oh, okay. So what advice would you give to a degree holder in physics on how to earn money and how to maximize on their financial growth over time? Is it safe to just stay, get a job?
I mean, this is it is a difficult question, especially in the context of Botswana,
Okay.
because of as still as a developing economy in terms of research and development.
Okay.
There's two big, well, essentially one big industry and tourism that kind of dominates the economic landscape. It's mining diamonds and mining other stuff, and tourism essentially, that and beef. So those are well established. So it's always a challenge of looking for the opportunities, the intersections, and all of that is great. But at one point, you're going to need seed funding, you're going to need capital to kind of expand, to build your business if you want to go to work for yourself. So my advice, what I would do is try and join an established organization or contribute to something, look for opportunities without not necessarily and trying to join it to see and be default to what they want.
Okay.
And use it as an opportunity to learn. Because you want to be able to differentiate yourself. Because especially if we're graduating, there's 40 physics degree or 40 forensic sciences, right? Everybody's got the same degree essentially. The only thing that distinguishes you is the mark on your certificate.
Yes.
But if you can add then experience to that, exposure, different things. So that then could unlock new opportunities. So it is a pity, but if you don't get a job as a physicist, don't be discouraged. Look for something else. If say there's an opportunity to go into education, then don't just say, "Oh, I'm just becoming a teacher." Don't just resign to, that this is going to be my life now.
Okay.
Maybe look at things to start a business, a tutoring business, helping students. Education is always an opportunity because parents are invested in their children's education.
Mm-hmm.
That will always be, I think there's three things that will always be true. People need to eat, they need to sleep somewhere, and they want something better for their kids. They want to improve their education. Those three things will always be there, and people will always be willing to spend some money on that. So as we're building the knowledge economy in Botswana, the biggest thing is you need manpower, you need people, you need to, and if you can demonstrate value, say even as a teacher, or extra class or whatever, and help the next generation to go through university a little bit more prepared, a little bit easier, to take it further, then I think there's already value in that. But in terms of going to where to go to be able to buy a new BMW in 5 years' time, that is always difficult. It depends on the context. But save money. Compound interest is your friend.
Yeah.
Whatever little bit you can, whatever you can save at the earliest opportunity, and you get some interest on it, compounds over time. It's for money, it's for your knowledge, it's for information. The same goes for everything. Things grow over time.
Yeah.
And that's as you add different, if you think about information knowledge, as you add different things to it, it's a little bit more nuanced, you have different experiences. It just adds to building you, and your resource, whether it's financial or knowledge or information or context or experience or skill or whatever. It's never the best time to invest in yourself was birth since the beginning. The second best time is right now. It's the same as planting a tree. When is the best time to plant a tree? Well, it was 10 years ago. The second best time is right now.
Okay. So if I want to dream out of the box, right, and I want to start or establish something, say a physics company, or there's so much to physics, basically astrology and all of that, and
astronomy, astrology we don't.
Oh, okay.
in Mexico.
All right. So, if I was to make a connection with some international organization that is interest and somehow pull them here to Botswana to like establish something,
Yeah.
could that work for me as a graduate? It's far-fetched, yes, but if it was possible, could it work?
I mean, of course it could work, but it will depend on how much time you can put in, how invested you are, how much perseverance you have. Because I mean, physics will tell you, and I think there's a famous quote by I don't know, some philosopher, but it says, "You give me a long enough lever and a place to stand, and you can move the earth."
Okay.
I mean, it's physically, you can calculate what the length of the asteroid. Okay, obviously there's asteroid will be, but with your strength, you'll be able to move it, but it's projected over, so to talk. In that, I'll try and think of a good example now, but I don't want to say you can do anything you set your mind to, but I don't think there's some truth to that. But it's how much of that you want to project now to the external agent and how much you take responsibility for yourself to develop. So I would just think the best way to get external partners or somebody involved in you, I think, is to start small
Mm-hmm.
and demonstrate what you can do, what you can bring, what value you can add.
Okay.
And in that way, because it's great to just say, I'm going to change the world. And you're
Yeah.
like, how are you going to change the world? No, I'm going to figure out, but I'm going to change the world.
Yeah.
But how? No, I'm going to change the world. Saying is not enough.
Yeah.
You've got to figure out what is the small little levers that's going to make a big difference.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not something, usually those things, some of the most ingenious discoveries was accidental.
Yeah.
But it's not, if you look back, it's not as accidental as just simply being like a random event. It was people, if your mind is prepared, you will be able to discern those essentially accidental discoveries, or people asked the right questions. They were looking at things. They weren't just discarding information. They were saying, "Oh, this is interesting.
Mm-hmm.
We designed this thing to look at this, but now we see all of this noise or all of this information. Like, maybe what does that tell us?" They're not saying, "Oh no, we're just interested in this. We don't care about anything else." So it's that openness to be kind of guided by the process and not having a fixed endpoint in time that you should be earning so much and Google should be investing in you and all of that. Because the problem is with all of those guys is you can have, the idea is one thing. Idea is usually 10% of the innovation. It's the proof of concept, demonstrating it, working on it, developing it, improving it, that iteration, and that's what's going to make a difference, because at the end of the day, you'll have a proven product or proven whatever that you can sell. It's not just the idea. Because if you just give away the idea, that whole development, you have no control over the development anymore. So it's not to build your own business, but to build your own brand.
Okay.
To be the best you can be in the position that you are in, with the skills that you have. But do not expect you to be the next Elon Musk if you've never seen an electric car or SpaceX. Be the best you. I mean, maybe some people accidentally goes into cosmetics. Or, just, I mean, I had a very interesting conversation with somebody who grew up in Palape, who's, was very aware of all the indigenous fauna and flora here on the top of hills. And like what people have been using it for traditional medicine and all of that. Now, I'm not saying there's a cure for cancer waiting to be discovered there. I'm also not saying there's not a cure for cancer waiting to be discovered there. It's that, and I think also there's, people call it indigenous knowledge. I don't really like that word because it's just your cultural context. It's just what you grew up with. It's what you've been exposed to. The stories that people are telling you. There's knowledge there that is specific to the village or the place or wherever you grew up with, and you can. It's not like now. No, you forget all about that, and it's wrong because lightning isn't formed that way. It's because of the friction and the static charges, and then it happens. It's now okay. You take that understanding, that description, your scientific brain, and you bring it to the village, the cultural part of you, and it's not like they have to be in conflict with them. You can see where are the overlaps and how can the one help the other. I'm not saying change the culture completely, but once again there's opportunities there. There's things that you can pursue or develop, and it's not necessarily going to make you money, but it's that thinking that you will develop, and you could be able to apply to a different context to add value and improve people's lives, and that is the value at the end of the day. That could be quantified into Pula and Taylors.
Yeah. So lastly, I would like to ask you, and I believe our listeners would also be interested. Once upon a time, I think when I was in first year, I saw you on a newspaper, I think, cycling.
Oh,
You did appear. I remember it was a talk in the school that, oh, we have a lecturer who actually won. Is that, I don't know if you won, but you participated. We just saw you and we were like, oh, okay, that's interesting. So I'd like you to give us more information or just tell us.
Cycling.
Exactly, yes.
I was cycling and I was running. I mean, I've always been. I don't know if it came about from studying physics and just being cooped up in an office or looking at a computer, but I've always enjoyed the outdoors. And I mean, this morning even I cycled to work, so people see me. I mean, I saw all the physicists looking at me walking across campus in my cycling kit going out to the gym. So I've always been interested in that, and it's always been a part of, I would say, my process. Because this morning, as I was cycling to work, I was thinking about the research problem that I have, and I think a lot of times, I remember not one of the biggest discoveries that I've ever made, but understanding came to me by just, I wouldn't say it's in your sleep, by just letting things kind of like wash over you. Like you've got all this information, it's like jumbling around in your head, and sometimes, it's not like you have to build a jigsaw. Sometimes you can just shake the box a little bit and the jigsaw puzzle pieces will fall into place.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, that's what running and cycling does. It just helps me kind of process the information and the day and the things you've been exposed to and the way of thinking.
Have you ever thought of making a career out of them?
Pardon?
Have you ever thought of making a career out of
I'm not good enough to be a professional. But it's just, maybe I should just say this. I think there's I don't know if you know the brand Asics, the sports brand from shoes and whatever, or apparel. Asics, ASCIS. It comes from a Latin word, please anybody can speak Latin, I'm going to butcher this, but it basically means a healthy mind and a healthy body. There's a Latin expression, and it's the initials of the Asics. And I believe, especially for university graduates, that is very important. You can't just your physical health and your mental, both psychological and your academic health. So it's so close together, and it's all part of the same system. And you need to take care of both those things. I mean, we all know if you're cramming for an exam, there's this brain fog at one stage just kind of comes over you, and you can't, it's there, but you just can't get it out. Or you're stressing too much or whatever. And I think just getting a release to get yourself tired is always a good thing to go and do. Because, I mean, you can be thinking, if you think about things under stress, it's always, I think, difficult to come to any productive solution. So at some stage, you just need to give yourself a break, go do something active, and get the body is a system. It's got different cycles, and you just need to just look after yourself in that regard as well. So yeah, but I did a lot more cycling races and extreme events. Now I'm trying to fit. I'm trying to get back into it.
Okay.
But I would encourage everybody to just be at least physically tired once or twice a week. Go do something, walk around, go to the gym, do some physical exercise, get some fresh air. Just to help all of this knowledge to kind of settle. Because it needs you can't just be reading the same. I mean, because one stage, when you've all been there, when you're reading like the same sentence over and over, and it just doesn't make sense. There's no understanding. Then you just need to, you need to take a break.
Yeah.
Not say a break for 3 days and forget about everything, but just come back to it and look at it with a fresh perspective.
Oh, okay. Thank you. Very intuitive conversation. There was much to be heard. I'll pass it back to the host to close up and thank you for the whole talk.
Thank you very much, Ernestine, for that wonderful work there, and thank you very much, Dr. Diener, for how it has progressed thus far. Indeed, it has been a wonderful experience, a very eye-opening one, and I believe our viewers and we as well also have learned a lot from this interaction. Do you have any last words before I wrap up? Anything you'd want to say? Anything for the students? Anything for the viewers? Anything?
No, I think maybe just to be balanced. I mean, if you're out of balance, if you're just studying, you don't get outside, and you're not socially interacting. It's not like life is not just one thing, and your work life, your study life is just one part of it. Yeah, just look for balance.
Thank you very much. Balance is important, and I believe that's correlating with what he mentioned, the word Ernestine just before of physical exercise. As an engineer, as a scientist, as an academic, we constantly work and strain our mind. Hence, it's important that every now and then we try to balance it out. So make sure that is one thing you do going forward. Thank you very much for taking the time to be here with us. Thank you very much for the addition you have put out there, the knowledge you shared. And I believe the viewers out there have enjoyed the session as much as we have. Thank you. Of scientists and engineers, we just want to express our heartfelt gratitude. In wrapping up, I just want to end with a word, kind of an encouragement for the students and everyone out there. There's something that I came across yesterday, and it was on a daily basis, we all start off at the same point. Every morning, as individuals, we start off at the same point, with the same things, but the difference lies in how prepared are you for that day. What you will end up achieving at the end is how prepared are you for that day. So for us all out there, the journey up ahead is very bright. The journey up ahead is full of opportunities. So make sure you continue learning, make sure you continue researching, make sure you continue perfecting your craft, and you will make it. Thank you very much for joining us, and thank you yet once more, Dr. Diener. This is Ryan here signing out. Say peace out.